Okay, so new love. It's exciting, right? All those butterflies, everything feels shiny and new. But sometimes those old relationship patterns, they kind of tag along. And it's like, wait, am I bringing baggage to this brand new thing? Well, in this deep dive, we're going to tackle that head on. We're using navigating new love, essential tips for a thriving relationship, as our guide. Think of it as a personal relationship coach, just without the hefty price tag.
And what I find so interesting is the source really emphasizes this idea of starting fresh doesn't mean erasing your past.
Yeah.
It's about the choices you make now, in the present. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you have a history, but it doesn't have to write the next chapter.
And that's huge because haven't we all had that fear, the what if this ends up just like last time feeling?
Yeah.
So today is about giving you the tools to quiet that fear and feel really good about moving forward.
And that's where emotional distancing comes in. Now, I know it sounds a bit clinical, but stick with me. Dr. John Gottman, a true expert on what makes love last, he says it's about dealing with those past relationship experiences in a way that actually helps you see your future more positively, not ignoring them, but unpacking them so they don't trip you up later.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like you wouldn't pack for a beach vacation in a snowsuit, right?
Yeah.
Got to ditch the winter wear to really soak up the sun.
Exactly. The source even uses this example of John and Emily, both coming out of tough breakups, but instead of letting that define things, they consciously said, okay, let's understand each other's pasts, but build something new based on who we are now. And guess what? It worked.
See, that's inspiring. It means finding happiness in love isn't about never getting hurt. It's about growing from those experiences. Okay, but let's get real for a second comparison. Who hasn't scrolled through social media and felt that twinge of, wait, are they happier than us?
Oh, it's so common. And the source nails it. Comparison is the thief of joy. We see these seemingly perfect couples and think they've got it all figured out. But here's the truth. Every relationship is its own unique thing. Dr. Emma Beale, who specializes in relationship therapy, puts it this way. Comparing your love life to someone else's is like comparing apples and oranges. You miss the awesomeness of your apple because you're too busy wishing it was an orange.
That is such a good analogy. It's like being at an incredible concert, but you're too busy checking if everyone else is having more fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why the source challenges us to focus on what makes our relationship special. Those inside jokes, shared values, those quirks that make your bond unique. Don't let that get overshadowed.
This is already making me feel lighter, ditching the comparison game. But okay, the source keeps going. It digs into the whole actions speak louder than words idea, which seems obvious, but I feel like there's more to it, right?
Oh, definitely. Early on, it's easy to get swept up in grand gestures or sweet talk. But what this source highlights, and social psychology backs this up, is that it's the consistent everyday actions that really reveal someone's character and intentions. Anyone can say they'll do something. It's the follow-through that matters.
So in a new relationship, how do we actually apply this? What kind of actions should we be paying attention to?
Dr. Lucy McDonald, a fantastic relationship psychologist, she says it's about observing your partner's behavior over time. Are they making time for you consistently, even when busy? Do their actions actually match their words? Do they make an effort to see your perspective, especially during disagreements? Those small, consistent actions are way more telling than any big declaration of love.
It's like that saying, watch what they do, not just what they say. Okay, get ready for this one because the source then throws us a curveball. It stresses how important vulnerability is in new love, which honestly can feel scary when you're still trying to put your best foot forward.
Oh, I get it. We want to seem confident, put together, especially early on. But here's the thing. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's actually the secret ingredient to a really deep, authentic connection.
Okay, I love that. But why, especially when you're just starting out with someone?
Because as scary as it can feel, vulnerability is the foundation for real intimacy. Brené Brown, she's amazing. She's dedicated years to understanding this. She says, and I love this quote, vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, and authenticity. When we let ourselves be truly seen, flaws and all, that's where real connection happens.
Wow, that is powerful. So it's about taking those little risks to show your true self, right? But how do you even start doing that when it's all still so new?
It really is about starting small. Maybe it's sharing a passion you have, even if it seems a bit niche. or expressing how you feel about something, even if it makes you a little vulnerable. Those little acts of courage, those build a foundation for a much deeper connection.
So it's not about having it all figured out. It's about being open to the journey.
Exactly, which actually leads perfectly into another key theme from the source, authenticity.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, who hasn't felt that pressure in a new relationship? To be on, downplay flaws, present that idealized version of yourself.
Oh, all the time. It's like we think if our new partner sees the real us too soon, they'll run for the hills. But is that actually true?
No. Dr. Robert Urich, he studies relationship dynamics,
Mhm.
and he says authenticity is way more attractive than we realize. Why? Because when both people are coming from that genuine place, it lets both partners feel seen and accepted for who they really are. It's like this safe haven where you can both just breathe easy, quirks and all.
Creating a space where you don't have to pretend, you can be yourselves. And I bet that makes those moments of connection even more meaningful.
Absolutely. Speaking of creating space, this next point the source makes is really interesting. It's about balancing being present in your relationship with maintaining your own life outside of it.
Okay, now that feels tricky. How do you give a new relationship the attention it needs without becoming clingy or overly dependent?
Right. It's a dance we all learn. But relationship coach Andrea Miller, she says having your own fulfilling life actually makes you more attractive. It seems counterintuitive, but
I'll have to admit, that is surprising. Why would having your own thing make you more appealing?
think about it when you're genuinely lit up by your own interests, friends, passions. It adds a bit of intrigue, a bit of mystery to the relationship. You're not always available, which makes the time you do spend together more valuable. Like that saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder.
It's about finding that sweet spot between togetherness and independence. But to do that, you need good communication skills, especially early on when you're still figuring each other out. And that's where the source brings up this next point, active listening.
So important. We all think you're good listeners. But how often are we really present, engaged in what our partner's saying without getting distracted by our own thoughts?
Oh, I've been guilty of that. Sometimes I'm already planning my response before they've even finished talking.
We've all been there. But that's why the source emphasizes this active listening thing. Communication expert Dr. Mark Chapman, he boils it down to three things: acknowledge, reflect, respond with empathy.
Okay, break that down for me. What does that look like in a real conversation?
So acknowledging is just letting your partner know you're hearing them. Saying things like, I hear you, tell me more, even just nodding along. Reflecting is where you paraphrase what they said to make sure you're both on the same page. And responding with empathy is about stepping into their shoes, trying to see it from their side, even if you don't agree. It's about validating their feelings and showing you get where they're coming from.
Wow, when you put it like that, it seems simple, but I can see how much of a difference that would make.
It really does. Dr. Chapman's research shows that active listening creates this deeper emotional closeness, this real understanding. It's like building a bridge of empathy between you.
Who wouldn't want that? But the source takes it even further. It's not just about listening when they talk, but being genuinely curious about their world, their dreams, passions, fears, all of it.
Right. It's one thing to hear the words, but it's another level to really want to understand the person behind the words. And that curiosity, it needs to be ongoing. Not a one-time thing, but something we bring to the relationship every day.
Okay, so how do you do that? How do you keep that curiosity alive, especially if you've been with someone for a while and you think you know everything about them?
That's where the source talks about approaching your partner with this beginner's mind. Asking those open-ended questions, really listening to their answers, being truly interested even if you think you've heard it before. It's about seeing the relationship as this evolving adventure, not some destination you've already reached.
That's a great way to put it, staying open to discovery, to learning and growing together.
Exactly. And that leads perfectly into this next emphasis, approaching relationships with mindfulness. Because it's not just about physically being there, it's about being emotionally and mentally present as well.
So being in the moment, not letting your mind wander to your to-do list or what's happening on Instagram.
Yes. Mindfulness in relationships, it's about savoring the good times and navigating the challenging ones with grace and compassion. It's about making space for real, meaningful connection without judgment or distractions.
I can see how that would be incredible, but what does that look like practically? Are we talking about meditating together?
It could be that,
Yeah.
but it can also be much simpler. Putting your phone away during a conversation, really tuning into what your partner is saying, just being present in that moment.
So it's a choice to be present with yourself and with your partner.
Exactly. And the source points out that mindfulness can actually reduce stress and pressure in a relationship.
Oh, totally. When you think about it, If you're both coming from that place of understanding and presence, it just naturally creates more harmony. It's like you're on the same team facing whatever life throws your way together.
Right. And psychologist Ellen Langer, who's done a ton of research on this, she found that couples who practice mindfulness were significantly happier. Less arguing, more appreciation, all that good stuff.
Wow, so it's not just some trendy self-help thing, it's backed by actual research.
It is. And it's something you can start practicing today, no matter where you are in your relationship.
Okay, I'm sold. Mindfulness, it's like the secret ingredient to a happier, more connected relationship.
It's about bringing intentionality and awareness, both within yourself and to the relationship.
This is all so valuable, and it makes me wonder, are there any real-life examples of couples who've used these ideas to build something amazing?
There are. The source tells a great story about Marie and John, a couple who, like many of us, really struggled with comparisons and the weight of past relationship baggage early on.
Okay, now I'm hooked. Tell me everything about Marie and John. How did they use these principles to create a happier, healthier relationship?
So at the beginning, Marie, she just couldn't help but compare John to her exes. It created a lot of tension.
Yeah.
Almost like she was holding him hostage to her past relationships. Have you ever felt that?
Oh, totally. It's so easy to let those old hurts influence how we see things, even when it's a totally different person.
Exactly. And Marie, she was so focused on what she thought was missing that she couldn't appreciate the amazing connection she already had with John.
So how do they break out of that cycle?
They did something really brave. They decided to try couples therapy.
That's awesome. It takes guts to admit you need help, especially when you're still in that early stage of a relationship.
It does. But their willingness to be vulnerable, to seek guidance, it really shows you how committed they were to making things work.
What did they learn in therapy that helped them shift their perspective?
One of the biggest things was communication. And not just talking at each other, but really truly listening to understand, not just to respond.
That reminds me of what we were saying about active listening. It's one thing to hear the words, but it's another to really let them soak in, to reflect on what your partner's actually saying.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's where those three key parts come in. Acknowledge, reflect, respond with empathy. Marie and John realized they were so caught up in getting their own points across that they weren't making space for each other.
Oh, it's such an easy trap to fall into, especially when you feel triggered or misunderstood. You just put your defenses up and stop really listening.
It happens. But therapy helped them see those patterns and find healthier ways to communicate. They learned to express their needs and boundaries without blaming each other, which made it safer to be vulnerable.
Yeah, because when you feel safe and respected, you're more open to showing those vulnerable parts of yourself.
Exactly. And that's where the magic really happens, when you can both be yourselves authentically without fear of judgment.
Creating that come-as-you-are vibe that makes relationships so special.
Right. And beyond just communication, they also learned about setting healthy boundaries.
Tell me more about that. What kind of boundaries are we talking about, especially in new love?
It's about recognizing that you're two separate people with your own needs and wants. And it's okay to have things just for you. It might be simple things like time for hobbies, keeping up with your own friends, or even just saying you need some space when you're feeling overwhelmed.
It makes total sense. Being in a relationship doesn't mean you have to become one person, right?
Exactly. And the source actually points out how crucial this is for women who are often expected to put their partner's needs first.
So often we think being in love means constant togetherness. But giving each other space to breathe, to have your own lives, it actually strengthens things, doesn't it?
It really does. It's all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
And for Marie and John, setting those boundaries actually made them cherish their time together even more.
Because absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? A little anticipation makes those moments together even more special.
Exactly. Now, on top of communication and boundaries, the most life-changing thing for Marie was learning about mindfulness.
Okay, this is what I'm really curious about. We've talked about it generally, but how did Marie use mindfulness to overcome the comparisons and insecurities that were holding her back?
It's pretty fascinating. Through therapy, she learned to be more present with her thoughts and feelings, without judgment. So when those negative thoughts about her exes or her insecurities with John popped up, she could see them for what they were, just thoughts, without getting swept away.
Like she learned to detach from those thoughts and not automatically believe them.
Exactly. It's like she took off a pair of blurry glasses and could finally see her relationship with John clearly. The past wasn't clouding her vision anymore.
That's huge. We often just believe our thoughts without question. But mindfulness gives you that pause, that space to choose a different perspective.
And the more she practiced, the easier it became to let go of those comparisons and appreciate John for who he was. She focused on the good stuff, their shared values, their connection, the respect they had for each other.
She shifted her focus from what was missing to what was already there.
Exactly. And as she kept practicing, it spread to other areas of their relationship. Mindful communication, mindful conflict resolution, even mindful intimacy.
Wow, so it became this whole new way of being in the relationship.
It really did. And the results were amazing. By bringing in communication, boundaries, and this mindfulness, they created a relationship that wasn't just loving, but deeply, deeply fulfilling.
Their story is incredibly inspiring. It proves that we don't have to repeat the same mistakes. With the right tools and a little effort, we can build something truly special. Okay, before we dive into the takeaways from their journey, let's pause for a second and reflect on everything we've discussed. Because this isn't just about knowing the information, it's about actually using it in our own lives, right?
I love that. Because what good is knowledge if you just keep it on the shelf?
It really is about taking action, right? It's like this source gives us all these amazing tools, but it's up to us to actually use them. And one thing that really struck me is how it connects these individual actions to like bigger trends.
Yes, it's really interesting how the source positions mindfulness. Not just as this personal thing you do, but as something that can transform your relationship. And the coolest part is it's not just some new agey idea, it's backed by actual science.
Totally. Like we were saying with Dr. Ellen Langer's research, couples who practiced mindfulness were actually happier. Less arguing, more appreciation. Who doesn't want that? But I'm curious, how does that actually work? It's not like mindfulness is this magic solution that just erases all your problems.
No, and definitely not. It's more like mindfulness gives you this pause button, right? Between feeling something and then reacting. Remember Marie and John, the couple who used therapy to work through those early relationship challenges? Well, for them, mindfulness wasn't just something they talked about. It became this whole way of life.
Oh, yeah. They were the ones who started meditating together, right? Did that actually make a difference in their day-to-day interactions?
It really did. But it went beyond formal meditation. They learned to bring that mindfulness to those little everyday moments, like really being present when the other person was talking, putting their phones away during dinner instead of scrolling small changes that created more space for connection.
It's amazing how these tiny shifts can make such a big difference. But I think the most inspiring part about their story is that they didn't just learn about these principles, they really lived them. And it completely transformed their relationship.
It's true. They went from struggling with all that insecurity and comparison to building a relationship based on respect, open communication, and just genuine presence. Their story is proof that you can break free from those old patterns and create the kind of love you dream of.
Absolutely. It's such a good reminder that we're not doomed to repeat the mistakes of our past relationships. With the right tools and some effort, we can build something truly incredible. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. What's one small step you can take today to bring more mindfulness, more authenticity, or even just more intention to your relationship?
That's the question, isn't it? And it really doesn't have to be some grand gesture. It could be as simple as sending a loving text, expressing your appreciation for something your partner did, or even just putting your phone down and really giving them your full attention for a few minutes.
It's those little acts of love and awareness that make all the difference.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, the most fulfilling relationships are built on those small, everyday moments of presence, gratitude, and care.
So well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into navigating new love with hopefully a little more intention, a little more awareness, and a whole lot more heart.
And remember, relationships, just like life, they're a journey, not a destination. So be kind to yourselves, be curious about each other, and never stop exploring what it means to truly love and be loved.